The aliens came at dawn, their ships blotting out the pale light of morning, shadows stretching across the valley like the fingers of a giant hand closing in. Dry Creek was small, nothing more than a cluster of barns, silos, and weather-beaten houses scattered between fields of wheat and stubborn scrub grass, yet the Vorlex Dominion had chosen it as their testing ground. They thought it would be easy. They thought it would be fast. They thought wrong. At the ridge where dirt met sky, Commander Krytal of the Vorlex surveyed the land. His armor gleamed like molten glass, his voice a serrated whisper carried by the translator embedded in his throat. "Primitive," he said, sneering at what lay before him. Rows of sharpened spikes hammered into mud, uneven trenches dug by callous human hands, pits covered with branches and straw. It was the work of farmers, not warriors. His soldiers laughed, the metallic rasp of their voices echoing like broken bells. At the center of that mockery stood Captain Elias Ward, broad shoulders, face carved by years of conflict, hair too stubborn to gray though worry etched its lines across his brow. He had not asked for command, but when the Vorlex ships descended, when governments stalled and armies hesitated, Dry Creek had turned to him. Now, wrapped in a faded uniform and boots caked with mud, he looked like the last thread holding humanity together. He spat into the dirt, unbothered by the alien laughter. "Yeah," Elias said, voice flat, almost bored. "Wooden sticks. You'll love 'em." Beside him stood Mira Hale, the medic. She carried no weapon, only a satchel bulging with gauze, herbs, syringes, and duct tape, the miracle cure-all of her world. Her eyes, sharp as glass, never lingered on Elias's bravado. She watched the people instead, the farmers gripping rusted rifles, the mothers clutching their children's hands too tightly, the men and women who had never expected to become soldiers yet now stood shoulder to shoulder, every one of them trembling with fear they would not admit. Myra's purpose was simple: keep them alive as long as possible. But even she doubted how long that would be. The Vorlex expected surrender. They always did. Their fleets broke planets by intimidation long before they broke them with fire. Krytal raised his blade, a curve of glowing steel that hissed with caged energy. "Humans of Dry Creek," he declared, "kneel, offer obedience to the Dominion, and your deaths shall be swift. Resist, and you will be erased." The crowd shuddered. A child whimpered. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Elias smiled. It was a humorless thing, a ghost of teeth in defiance. "You hear that?" he asked, turning not to Krytal but to his people. "Swift death. Kind of them, isn't it? Like they're doing us a favor." He crouched, scooping up a clump of dirt, letting it crumble through his fingers. "Only thing is, this is our dirt, our barns, our town, and I don't kneel in my own damn dirt." Laughter, real human laughter, rippled through the line. Nervous, shaky, but real, Mira almost smiled despite herself. Krytal hissed in irritation. The first shots came swift. Plasma bolts ripped across the field, scorching earth and shattering wood. A barn exploded in a blossom of fire, sending animals shrieking into smoke. The townsfolk scattered, diving into trenches, clutching crude weapons with white-knuckled desperation. Elias barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos like a whip. Mira was already moving, dragging a bleeding farmer behind cover, her hands quick and steady despite the panic. The Vorlex advanced with mechanical precision, boots crushing mud, rifles humming with death. Each step closer was a step deeper into the valley. Each step closer was a step nearer the traps. And yet, the humans were breaking. A young boy, no older than 15, froze in the open, too terrified to move. Mira saw him. Elias saw him. Krytal saw him too. The commander raised his blade, a gesture both casual and cruel. Elias sprinted. His body moved before thought, before fear. He tackled the boy just as the blade hissed downward, sparks spraying as steel met stone. Elias rolled, mud in his teeth, pain lancing up his shoulder. He shoved the boy toward Mira, shouting, "Run!" Krytal turned his gaze on Elias. Their eyes met, human brown against alien silver. Krytal's sneer deepened. "Wooden sticks will not save you." Elias, still on the ground, spat again. "Maybe not, but gravity's a bitch. His hand snapped a rope hidden beneath the mud. The earth groaned. The trap sprung. A section of ground collapsed, swallowing half a dozen Vorlex soldiers into a pit lined with sharpened spikes. Armor screeched. Alien screams echoed. Plasma rifles clattered uselessly into the muck. The valley erupted in chaos. Soldiers stumbled backward, tried to regroup, only to trip another rope that sent a cascade of logs swinging down from the ridge, crushing two more beneath their weight. The people of Dry Creek roared. For the first time, their fear cracked into something sharper. Triumph. The aliens were not untouchable. They could bleed. They could fall. But victory came at a cost. A plasma bolt struck a house where families hid, flames devouring it in seconds. Mira screamed, sprinting toward the inferno, ignoring Elias's shout for her to stop. She dragged two coughing children out before the roof collapsed, her sleeve catching fire as she stumbled into the dirt. Elias was there in an instant, slapping out the flames, cursing, pulling her back behind cover. She pushed him away, already reaching for the next wounded. The battle raged, but the moment of shift had come. Krytal's arrogance faltered. He barked orders, voice harsh, trying to restore control. But his soldiers hesitated. They had laughed at wooden spikes. They had laughed at ropes and mud. They were not laughing anymore. Smoke thickened. Fire turned the sky a violent orange. Through it all, Elias rose, mud-smeared, chest heaving, eyes bright with fury. He raised his empty rifle like a banner. "You want this valley?" he shouted, voice cracking but unyielding. "You'll choke on it." The townsfolk echoed his cry, a ragged chorus of defiance. Plasma bolt screamed. Trap snapped. Blood spilled. But Dry Creek did not break. Not yet. And in that moment, Elias understood the truth. They didn't need to win today. They just needed to make the Vorlex doubt. Doubt was the first crack. Doubt was the beginning of victory. The ridge thundered with another trap springing shut, a tree trunk swinging with terrible force, snapping bones and scattering soldiers. Krytal's silver eyes widened, just for a heartbeat. Elias saw it. Mira saw it. Every human in that valley saw it. The aliens could fear, and if they could fear, they could lose. Remember this, viewer, as the smoke drifts from this valley into your mind. The strong may mock, the arrogant may laugh, but laughter is not armor and arrogance is not a shield. Even the sharpest blade falters when it strikes the ground, and even the proudest empire stumbles when it forgets the weight of dirt beneath its feet. We are not mighty because we are flawless. We are mighty because we endure, and sometimes a wooden spike is all you need. The smoke clung to the valley like a living thing, wrapping itself around the broken fields and half-burned barns until sight itself seemed to choke. The Vorlex had expected quick slaughter, a flash of dominance that would terrify humanity into submission, but instead they found themselves wading through a nightmare of mud, rope, and sharpened wood. Every step forward had teeth. Every shadow threatened to move. Their polished armor and humming rifles were no longer symbols of power, but burdens dragging them into the earth. Elias Ward crouched in the ditch with a half-dozen townsfolk, sweat streaking his mud-stained face. He reloaded his rifle by instinct, though the ammunition dwindled faster than he dared admit. He was tired. God, he was tired, but he forced his voice steady. Hold. Let them come closer. Don't waste shots on the shiny ones. Wait for the stumble. His men nodded, trembling but listening. They had learned that much. Panic killed faster than plasma. Mira Hale knelt beside a wounded farmer whose leg had been mangled by stray fire. Her hands moved quickly, wrapping the wound, sealing torn flesh with bandages reinforced by duct tape. She whispered reassurance, though her heart quaked in her chest. Every cry of pain echoed louder than the battle. Every pair of wide eyes begging her for life carved another scar into her soul. Yet she did not stop. She would not stop. The Vorlex pressed on. Krytal marched at the center, his blade glowing hot as though it hungered for more blood. His soldiers moved with him, methodical and precise. But precision faltered in this terrain. A hidden pit claimed another squad, wooden spikes splintering armor as shrieks cut through the smoke. A log swung down from ropes, scattering soldiers like bowling pins. Dry Creek's traps were crude, but crude was enough. Crude was survival. Still, survival had a cost. A plasma bolt slammed into the trench, hurling dirt and shrapnel. Elias shielded the boy he had saved earlier, feeling the burn singe his arm. He gritted his teeth, shouting, "Stay down." Around them, the ground shook with every alien step. He could see his people faltering, could see fear creeping back in. Mira grabbed his arm, eyes blazing despite the blood smearing her cheek. They won't last unless you give them more than orders. You have to give them hope. Elias stared at her, then at the people watching him with wide, desperate eyes. He wanted to tell them he was no prophet, no hero, just a soldier too stubborn to quit. But he swallowed that truth, stood taller, and let his voice cut through the chaos. They bleed. You saw it. You heard them scream. They are not gods. They are meat and metal like us. So fight. For every field they burned, for every home they broke, for every child they would have taken, fight. The trench erupted in a ragged cheer, rifles firing in unison, arrows loose from handmade bows. Alien armor sparked as projectiles struck, not always killing but always slowing, always forcing hesitation. Doubt spread through the Dominion ranks like rot through fruit. Krytal snarled, hacking down a log trap with his blade, rallying his soldiers with guttural commands. He would not allow fear. Elias saw him then, towering, unstoppable, silver eyes burning with fury. The sight chilled him, but something else stirred beneath that fear. Challenge, the kind a soldier recognizes. A duel waiting to happen. The battle stretched into the marrow of time. Hours felt like days. Smoke turned the sky into a furnace, and the smell of burning wheat and charred flesh coated every breath. Mira moved ceaselessly, her arms aching, her satchel nearly empty. She patched wounds with cloth torn from her own shirt, used spit when she had no water, hope when she had no medicine. Her face was pale, but her resolve only hardened. And then came the break. Krytal's voice roared above the din, a command like thunder. The Vorlex shifted, abandoning caution. Surging in one brutal charge meant to crush the humans in one sweep. Plasma fire seared trenches, collapsing cover. Soldiers leapt pits rather than falling into them, blades flashing as they struck down defenders. The tide was turning. Dry Creek's thin defenses crumbled. Elias fought like a man possessed, rifle empty, swinging like a club, fists bloodied, refusing to fall. He saw his people dying, saw Mira cornered by advancing troops, saw the young boy huddled in terror once again. And he knew the next moment would decide everything. Krytal charged. His massive frame cleaved through mud and fire, his blade cutting down a defender as if slicing wheat. He leapt the trench, landing before Elias with a crash that shook the earth. The alien sneered, raising his weapon. "Neo-human." Elias spat mud from his lips. "Not my style." The blade came down. Elias dodged barely, the heat searing his skin. He swung his rifle like a hammer, striking Krytal's jaw. The alien staggered but did not fall. He slashed again, sparks flying as steel met wood. Elias stumbled, his weapon shattering. He was outmatched. He knew it. Then Mira was there, bleeding but unyielding. She hurled a stone at Krytal's head with all her strength. It clanged uselessly against his armor, but it drew his gaze for one precious instant. Elias seized the rope at his feet. The last trap, their final gambit. He yanked it hard. Above, the great tree groaned. For weeks they had carved it, balanced it, sharpened its end into a monstrous spear. Now it swung downward with the weight of nature itself. Krytal turned too slow. The wooden spike drove into his chest with a sickening crunch, impaling him against the mud. His scream split the sky, a sound of fury and disbelief. He clawed at the trunk, at Elias, at anything, but strength failed him. His blade fell. His body twitched, then stilled. Silence swept the battlefield. The Vorlex froze, eyes fixed on their commander pinned by wood, their invincible leader undone by a tree. For a heartbeat the war stopped, the only sound the hiss of flames and the ragged breathing of survivors. Then came the panic. Alien ranks broke, discipline shattering. Soldiers scrambled back, firing wildly, tripping their own comrades. The valley consumed them, Traps still untriggered, humans still fighting, the very earth itself rejecting their presence. They fled into the smoke, leaving behind weapons, bodies, and fear. Elias collapsed to one knee, chest heaving, vision swimming. Mira caught him, holding his face between her bloody hands. "You did it," she whispered, though her voice trembled with exhaustion. "You showed them we don't kneel." Elias forced a weak grin. "Told you they'd love the sticks." Around them, the townsfolk emerged from the trenches, battered but alive, eyes wide as they looked upon the impossible. The mighty Vorlex in retreat, their commander slain by wood. Hope flickered where only despair had lived. For the first time since the ships had descended, Dry Creek breathed. Listen closely now, viewer, for this moment carries weight. Never mistake simplicity for weakness. A rope, a log, a sharpened branch. Tools so crude they were laughed at became the downfall of arrogance cloaked in steel. The lesson is carved in this valley, that survival is not measured in weapons or wealth, but in will. The earth favors those who refuse to kneel, and the simplest trap becomes a crown when placed in the hands of the defiant. So remember, mockery is a shadow of fear, and those who laugh at your small defenses have already forgotten how easily the ground swallows giants. The battlefield lay quiet at last. Smoke thinned into the sky, curling upward in faint ribbons that carried the stench of ash and blood. The valley floor was scarred with craters, blackened wood, and broken armor. Where alien metal gleamed in ruin, wooden spikes jutted proudly, grave markers and warnings in equal measure. Dry Creek had not vanished. Against every prediction, against every mockery, the town still stood. Elias Ward walked through the wreckage with his rifle slung over his back, though it held no bullets. His boots sank into mud churned by battle, his body stiff with bruises and burns. Yet he walked upright, not because his strength had returned, but because others were watching. The people of Dry Creek looked to him now not as a neighbor or a stubborn veteran, but as their captain, their anchor. He did not feel worthy of the title, but he carried it because no one else could. Mira Hale worked tirelessly even in the aftermath. She moved from wounded to wounded, her satchel nearly empty, hands raw from stitching and bandaging. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, her arm still wrapped where Krytal's blade had cut deep, yet she refused to stop. Elias watched her pause only to rub blood from her eyes, then move again to press cloth against another burn. He wanted to pull her away, to force her to rest, but he knew she would never forgive him if she did. So he stayed near instead, steadying those she treated, lifting the broken, carrying water, doing what she could not spare herself to do. Together they wove survival from threads of exhaustion. By nightfall, the valley had grown eerily calm. The Vorlex had vanished into the smoke, dragging their fear with them. No more shots fired, no blades gleaming in the dark. Yet no one in Dry Creek slept. They sat by fires built from shattered beams, whispering in disbelief that they still lived. Children clung to parents. Farmers stared at their blistered hands, and in every face flickered something Elias had prayed to see. Hope. But hope was fragile. As Elias stood by the fire, he overheard their whispers. They'll come back. They'll bring more. What do wooden spikes matter against ships in the sky? Fear lingered like embers refusing to die. He could not blame them. He feared it too. Later, when the wounded had been tended, Elias found Mira sitting on a log, head bowed, her bloody hands hanging limp in her lap. He sat beside her, saying nothing for a while. She broke the silence first. "I lost 3 today. I tried everything, Elias. Tape, stitches, herbs. Nothing was enough." Her voice cracked on the last word. He wanted to tell her she had saved far more than she had lost, that she was the reason children were laughing by the fire instead of buried beneath it. But he knew words rarely healed the way deeds did. So instead he said softly, "If not for you, none of them would be here, including me." Her eyes lifted to his, shimmering in the firelight. For the first time since the battle began, she let herself lean against him, just for a moment, just enough to remember they were human and not only weapons. He rested his hand over hers, both their fingers streaked with dry blood. No words followed. They did not need them. Days passed. Dry Creek began to rebuild, though scars remained everywhere. Burned houses became skeletons of wood. Fields were blackened and barren, and the ground was pocked with pits. But life pushed forward. Barns were patched with salvage beams. Wells were cleared. Chickens, impossibly, still clucked in the ashes. Every sunrise brought work, and every sunset brought quiet mourning. Rumor spread beyond the valley. The Vorlex had fled. Their commander had been slain not by plasma or steel, but by a sharpened tree. The tale traveled faster than smoke, carried on frightened whispers and nervous laughter. In alien camps orbiting the planet, soldiers muttered uneasily. If Krydal could fall to wood, what else could bring them low? Arrogance began to fracture. Elias understood the meaning of that fracture. A single victory would not end the war, but it had planted doubt, and doubt was more powerful than any rifle. Doubt could erode empires. He stood on the ridge at night, staring at the distant stars, wondering if those watching above were still laughing. He hoped they were, because laughter meant they had not yet understood, and underestimation was humanity's sharpest blade. One evening, the town gathered in the square, what little remained of it. They stood around a makeshift platform built from planks and debris, staring at Elias as though waiting for something he was not sure he could give. He hated speeches, hated the sound of his own voice when it carried too much weight, but Myra's eyes urged him forward. So he stepped up, scarred and weary, and spoke. "They told us to kneel," he said, his voice low at first, then louder as silence fell across the crowd. "They told us we were weak, that wood and rope and mud were nothing." He paused, pointing at the valley, at the broken traps and shattered logs. But look at what nothing did. It stopped them. It made them bleed. It reminded them that this is our dirt, and in our dirt we don't kneel. The crowd stirred, murmurs rising. He went on. "They'll come again. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe months from now. They'll come with more ships, more fire, more arrogance. But remember this, arrogance is not armor. And fear? Fear is a weapon. And tonight we show them how sharp it can be. They are not gods. They are not immortal. They are only soldiers. And soldiers can fall." Cheers broke the stillness. Not loud, not triumphant, but strong enough to shake the ashes. People smiled through their tears. Children laughed, clapping tiny hands. For a moment, Dry Creek believed. When the crowd dispersed, Mira walked to Elias's side. She leaned close, her voice soft enough that only he heard. "Do you think they'll ever understand duct tape?" He smirked despite his exhaustion. "God, I hope not. It's our secret weapon." They stood together, side by side, as stars glittered coldly above, indifferent to the valley's small victory. Yet in that indifference lay the truth. Survival had been earned not by weapons but by will, not by machines but by hands, not by kneeling but by standing. Even when standing meant nothing more than facing the impossible with laughter. So let this memory remain with you, listener, watcher, wanderer of stories. Empires rise and steel, but steel rusts. Technology dazzles, but technology fails. What endures is not the sharpness of the blade, but the stubbornness of the hand that holds it. Remember the valley where we defeated metal, where laughter silenced mockery, where the ground itself rose to protect its own. Take this truth with you, that strength is not in what you wield, but in what you refuse to surrender. Hope is not fragile, it is relentless. And sometimes when the world demands you kneel, the sharpest weapon you can hold is the courage to remain standing.